Emma Cooper had always believed that life would settle into something safe and warm once she married Daniel. She had grown up in a small town in North Carolina, a place where people waved from their porches, and news traveled faster than weather changes. She met Daniel at the community college campus cafe, where she used to study by the window, quietly watching the world while trying to understand her place in it. Daniel had walked up with a confident smile, the kind that made people instinctively step aside to give him attention. He had charm, laughter ready, ambition shining behind every word. For a while, Emma felt like she got swept into something bigger than herself, something beautiful and bright, and she let it carry her forward. They married 2 years later. A backyard wedding under white string lights. Families gathered, neighbors watching from their porches. And everyone said the same thing. They're perfect. And maybe they were. At first, Emma used to wake up with her heart full, feeling lucky to love and be loved. Daniel would pull her close in the mornings, whispering playful jokes or gentle promises about the life they were building. But life is rarely a straight line. And somewhere along the way, a subtle distance began to grow between them. It wasn't loud or dramatic. There were no big fights, no broken glasses, no slammed doors. It was quieter, more invisible, like a cool draft slipping through a window that no one knew was cracked open. Daniel worked more. He worked at a logistics firm in Charlotte, trying to climb as quickly as he could. He said it was for them, for the house, for the future. But the future always seemed to be a place that kept moving forward. Never arriving in the present, Emma tried to understand. She tried to support him the way a good wife should, bringing him coffee when he worked late, sitting next to him while he typed reports, waiting for him to close his laptop and look at her the way he used to. But the laptop stayed open longer, and his eyes often looked tired, worn. Somewhere far away at night, Daniel would fall asleep quickly, and Emma would lie awake next to him, looking at the ceiling, wondering when she had become invisible in her own home. She didn't blame him, not fully. She didn't think he meant to drift away, but the distance was real, and she felt it like a quiet ache beneath her ribs. Her family and friends still said she was lucky. They saw the house, the stability, the way Daniel always pulled out her chair at dinner when guests were around. They didn't see the silence between them when everyone left. They didn't see the way Emma's hands would hover in the air for a second, wanting to reach for him, but stopping herself because she didn't know if he would reach back. Then came Ethan, Daniel's younger brother. He had been away for a few years, working outdoor seasonal jobs, traveling between Colorado, Montana, and lakeside towns up north. He wasn't the type who chased climbing ladders. He chased skies, open spaces, and moments that made him feel alive. When Ethan returned to North Carolina, the family welcomed him back like sunlight. He had always been the one who could make everyone laugh effortlessly, not by being loud, but by being present. Truly present. When he listened with his full attention. When he cared all the way. Emma hadn't known how much she needed to be seen until Ethan saw her. It started simply, the same way all unexpected things do. He noticed little things, like how she paused before answering questions, how she ran her thumb across her wedding band when she felt uneasy, how her eyes didn't light up the way they used to in old photographs displayed on the living room wall. He didn't say anything about it at first. He just talked to her, asked how she was feeling, genuinely, not the polite version of "how are you?" people ask while moving past you, but the kind that waits for the real answer. One afternoon, during a family gathering, Daniel was surrounded by co-workers talking about business deals, accomplishments, corporate strategies. Emma was helping refill drinks and plates, doing what she always did, keeping everything running quietly in the background. Ethan walked over to her while she stood at the sink rinsing a dish. He leaned against the counter and said softly, "You look tired." Not as criticism, not as accusation, but as a noticing, a caring. Emma felt something loosen in her chest, something she didn't realize had been locked tightly for months. She laughed it off lightly, saying, "Everyone gets tired," but her voice wavered just a little. Ethan didn't push. He never pushed. He simply nodded, his eyes saying he saw more than she was admitting later. When most of the family had moved to the backyard for a game of cornhole, leaving the kitchen quiet, Ethan approached her again. He spoke gently, like someone approaching a bird that might fly away if startled. "Hey, can we talk for a moment?" Emma nodded, assuming he needed help with something, or wanted to ask her about job opportunities or life advice. She followed him to the small office room near the hallway, the one Daniel used to work in when he didn't feel like driving to the office. The room was warm, sunlight filtering through thin curtains, dust floating softly in the air. The door clicked shut behind them, not loudly, just enough for the outside world to fade. Emma stood near the desk, uncertain. Ethan stayed near the window, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense in a way she hadn't seen before. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke, and the silence felt heavy in a way that made Emma's breath catch. She opened her mouth to ask what was wrong, but Ethan spoke first, his voice low, not shaking, but slow enough to show how carefully he had thought about what he was saying. "I just want you to know I see you." Emma felt her heart pause, not stop but hover, unsure. He didn't mean it romantically, not in that moment. He meant it in the way someone acknowledges another person's quiet sadness. And it was that honesty that made her eyes sting. Outside, laughter and conversation continued. The world unchanged, unaware. Inside that small room, something had shifted. Not loud, not sudden, but undeniable. A moment that would stay in her memory. A moment she would think about later. A moment that would change everything quietly, not because of love, but because the heart remembers being seen. And Emma, who had felt invisible in her own home, was visible again, even if only for a moment. Even if nothing more could come of it. Even if it would lead to questions she was not ready to ask herself yet. The office door remained closed. But something inside Emma had opened. Something gentle. Something aching. Something alive. And though no one knew it yet, this was the beginning of everything that would follow. The moment before choices. Before honesty, before healing, and before heartbreak. The moment when a quiet life shifted. Just enough to never be the same again. And Emma stood in that shift. Silent, breathing. Unsure, but awake. Finally awake. When Emma left the office that day, she did not know what exactly had changed inside her. Only that something had shifted like a door she didn't remember opening had been nudged just enough for light to slip through. She tried to rejoin the family gathering with a smile, but she felt the echo of Ethan's words lingering in her chest. "I see you." The phrase repeated in her mind like a quiet drumbeat, gentle but impossible to ignore. The world outside the office had not altered. Daniel was still laughing with his co-workers in the backyard. Her sister-in-law was still arranging plates of fruit. Children still chasing each other through the grass. It all looked the same. And yet Emma felt like she was walking through a room she used to know, but could no longer recognize fully. Over the next few weeks, life continued in its usual rhythm. But Emma noticed herself watching everything more closely. Noticing the silence between her and Daniel in ways she used to overlook. Noticing how their conversations had become informational instead of emotional. A daily exchange of schedules rather than feelings. They still functioned well as a household. Bills paid, meals cooked, polite affection shared in public. People would say they were stable, reliable, strong. But stability can also hide loneliness when both people are too tired to look at what has been lost. Emma wondered if Daniel noticed the growing space between them. She wondered if he felt it too, and was simply too overwhelmed to confront it. Or if he had grown comfortable with the distance. She couldn't blame him entirely. She hadn't said anything either. Days passed, then weeks. And Ethan became a steady presence, not intrusive, not loud, simply there. He came by for family dinners, helped repair things around the house, sat on the porch with Daniel in the evenings, drinking iced tea and talking about sports. Emma found herself avoiding being alone with him, not because she feared him, but because she feared the truth she saw reflected in his eyes. The truth that someone had noticed her pain, her hunger to be seen, her quiet sadness, that fate doesn't listen to fear. And one rainy Thursday afternoon, when Daniel was still at work and the house was quiet, Ethan stopped by to return a tool he had borrowed. Emma opened the door and knew immediately that something was different. His posture, his expression, the way his eyes met hers with a weight she couldn't escape. She tried to keep the moment light, offering him coffee, stepping back to let him inside. The rain tapping on the windows created a soft backdrop, a steady rhythm, a sound that made the world feel smaller, safer. They sat at the kitchen table, steam rising from mugs between them. But the air was thick with something unspoken, something that had been waiting patiently. Ethan took a slow breath, his fingers wrapped around the mug but not drinking. "Emma," he began, his voice quiet, steady, but full of something heavy and full. "I need to tell you something before it becomes something worse." Emma felt her heartbeat rise, but she stayed still, waiting, not trusting her voice. Ethan lifted his eyes to meet hers, and his gaze held no selfishness, no desire to take, only honesty, painful honesty. "I can't watch you pretend you're fine." Emma opened her mouth to deny it, to say the easy words she always said. "I'm okay. I'm just tired. Everyone goes through this." But the words didn't come, because the moment she looked at Ethan's face, she knew he already knew the truth. Her throat tightened, her eyes burning softly, the kind of burn that comes from holding back tears long before they are ever shed. "You used to laugh differently," Ethan continued, his voice softer now, slow and steady, like someone talking to stop themselves from shaking. "You used to light up when you told stories, when you talked about your plans, your dreams. But now it's like you're dimming yourself to fit into a life that isn't looking at you anymore." Emma swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around her mug, her voice coming out small and hoarse. "You don't understand." But Ethan shook his head gently. "I do." His eyes held something she recognized. Loneliness, heartbreak, longing, but not for some fantasy of her. Not for romance, not for possession. It was the longing of someone who wished he could fix something that was never his to mend. "Daniel loves you," Ethan said. And those words hurt more than any confession could have, because they were true. "But he doesn't see you right now. And I don't think he realizes what he's losing." Emma's breath trembled as she whispered, "So what do you want me to do?" Ethan closed his eyes briefly, gathering courage, then spoke slowly. "I want you to stop disappearing." The rain continued, soft and constant, filling the silence between them with something almost gentle. This was not a confession of love, not a request, not a temptation. It was a plea for her to save herself. Emma felt tears escape, silent and warm, running down her cheeks. She hadn't cried in months, maybe longer. Her emotions had been stored away, folded neatly behind responsibilities, chores, dinners, carefully hidden so she didn't have to face them. Ethan did not move to wipe her tears, did not touch her. He stayed exactly where he was, respectful, still, grounded. "I'm not asking for anything," he said softly. "I just wanted you to hear the truth from someone who sees you." Emma nodded slowly. Breath heavy, heart unsteady. Thank you, she whispered. Voice fragile. There was nothing else to say. Nothing else that could be said without crossing a line. Both of them were afraid to acknowledge even existed. After a quiet moment, Ethan stood, leaving his untouched coffee behind. He walked toward the door but paused before opening it. Without turning around, he said one last thing. His voice barely above a breath. You deserve to feel alive. And then he left. The rain swallowing his footsteps as he disappeared down the driveway. Emma stayed at the table long after, her fingers still wrapped around a cooling mug, her tears drying slowly on her cheeks. She felt something awakening inside her. Not toward Ethan specifically, but toward life. Toward herself. A soft flicker of a flame that had been nearly extinguished. She knew she had to talk to Daniel, not in frustration. Not in accusation, but in truth. Not to choose someone else, but to choose herself. To choose honesty over silence. Connection over routine. Healing over pretending. The rain outside slowly began to lighten. The clouds shifting just enough for a pale ray of light to break through. Emma breathed in deeply, feeling the warmth return to her chest slowly. Like a sunrise in the distance, whatever happened next would require courage. And heartbreak and patience. But for the first time in a long time, Emma felt awake, present, alive. And the quiet of the house no longer felt like emptiness, but the beginning of change, a change she could no longer run from, a change she finally felt strong enough to face. One breath, one conversation, one day at a time. The morning after the rain, the house was quiet in a different way. Not empty, but expectant, as if the walls themselves knew something important was about to happen. Emma stood in the kitchen holding a warm mug of tea, her hands steady even though her heart moved like waves against her ribs. She had cried quietly the night before, not broken tears, but soft ones. The kind that come when someone remembers who they are after being forgotten. She felt tender, exposed, but more awake than she had in months, maybe years. Daniel came down the stairs with tired eyes, a work shirt half tucked in. His tie draped over his shoulder like a habit he no longer questioned. He didn't notice the look in her eyes right away. He didn't see the change, because he wasn't used to looking closely anymore. And that realization alone made Emma's breath tremble. He kissed her forehead out of routine, mumbled something about meetings, deadlines, schedules, and she listened. But today she did not nod quietly and move aside. Today she spoke before he could leave the room. Daniel, we need to talk. The words hung in the air, heavier than any thunderstorm. Daniel stopped, his keys still in his hand. His expression confused, surprised, maybe even afraid. He turned to face her. Really face her. For the first time in a long time. Okay, he said slowly. Because he could see in her eyes that this was not a small thing. They sat at the table, the same table where they had eaten meals, hosted family, laughed in earlier years, the same table where silence had slowly replaced conversation. Emma took a breath, steady and clear. I feel like we've been living next to each other. Not with each other. Daniel blinked, his jaw tightening just a little, his voice barely above a whisper. You think I don't know that? She hadn't expected that, a flicker of truth in his tone, a crack in his calm shell. Emma felt emotion rise in her chest. But not anger, not blame, just sadness. Deep and quiet. I miss us, she said. I miss the way we used to talk. The way we used to look at each other. Daniel leaned back in his chair, running his hands over his face. I've been trying, Emma. I've been working so hard. I thought I was doing what was best. I know, she whispered, because she did. She had seen the exhaustion, the pressure, the weight of expectation he carried. But somewhere along the line, we stopped choosing each other. Silence settled between them, but not the painful kind. The kind where truth finally has room to breathe. Daniel looked at her then. Really looked. His eyes tired but sincere. "Are you asking me to leave?" Emma's heart tightened. "No," she said softly. "I'm asking you to come back." Those words hit the air like a soft bell ringing. Small but impossible to unhear. Daniel's shoulders lowered. A breath leaving him like a quiet release. "I don't know how," he admitted. Voice cracked at the edges. Emma reached her hand across the table, not with desperation, but with hope. "We start with honesty." They talked for hours. Slower, gentler, not trying to fix everything at once. Just acknowledging what had gone missing. Emma told him how lonely she had felt. Not accusing, just explaining. Daniel confessed how afraid he had been of failing her, of not being enough, and how he thought working harder would protect their future, even as it pulled him away from their present. No voices were raised, no accusations thrown, no dramatic collapse. Just two people who had once been deeply in love, learning how to speak to each other again. Sentence by sentence, breath by breath, when Daniel finally left for work, he kissed her differently, not out of habit, but intention, a choice, a promise to try. Emma stood by the window as his car pulled away, feeling something warm inside her chest. Not sudden joy, not instant healing, but a beginning, quiet and real, yet even with hope growing. Another weight remained in her heart. Ethan. She had not seen him since the afternoon in the rain. They had not texted, had not called, had not spoken at all. And maybe that silence was the only respectful thing they could share now. That silence holds memory. And Emma felt the memory of his words every time she thought of herself. Of her value, of her voice. She didn't want to hurt him. And she didn't want to lose him either. But some relationships are not meant to become love stories. Some are meant to be turning points, lessons, awakenings. And Emma understood that now, gently, like someone accepting the shape of their own heart for the first time. A week passed before she saw Ethan again. It was at a weekend family dinner. Just like before, laughter in the backyard. Kids running on the grass. Plates and glasses and warm summer air. Emma felt nervous, but not afraid. She walked outside with a calm she didn't recognize as herself from before. But as herself now, Ethan saw her from across the yard. And something flickered in his eyes. Not surprise, not tension, but a soft acknowledgement. Like two people standing on the same page quietly. He walked toward her slowly, respectful distance between them. "Hey," he said, voice gentle. "Hi," she replied. Her smile small, real, steady. They did not go inside to talk. They did not close any doors. They stood under the open sky, where everything could stay honest. Open and safe. Emma spoke first, because this was her moment. "I talked to Daniel," Ethan nodded, his jaw tightening just a little, but his eyes warm. "Good," he said, and he meant it, truly. "We're trying," she added, slow, but real. "I'm glad," Ethan replied, and there was no bitterness in his tone. Only relief, gentle and quiet. There was a pause, the kind filled with meaning but not regret. Emma took a breath, her voice soft. "Thank you." Ethan did not ask for what. He already knew. But she said it anyway, because some truths deserve to be said aloud. "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Ethan swallowed, his eyes shining for just a moment. But he did not step closer, did not reach for her, did not ask for anything. He simply nodded, honoring the moment with silence that was full, not empty. "You look alive again," he said quietly. And that was the closure neither of them had to explain. The evening continued around them. Laughter, warm air, soft light. And life moved forward, not in dramatic leaps, but in small, steady steps. Ethan remained part of the family. Part of Emma's world, but in a different way now. He became a quiet friend, a gentle presence, someone who cared without leaning, who supported without expecting, who understood boundaries that protected everyone's heart. Emma and Daniel worked slowly, sometimes clumsily, sometimes beautifully. They learned to talk again, to look at each other, to reach for each other when it mattered. Love became something active again, something chosen, not assumed. Some days were harder than others, but they kept trying, together. And Emma learned something she had never understood before. Not all love is meant to become a relationship. Some love arrives to wake you up, to remind you of your own worth, to guide you back to yourself. And sometimes, the heart that awakens you is not the one you stay with, but the one that helps you return to where love can grow again. Life moved forward gently, with honesty, with tenderness, with breathing room for two hearts finding their way back, one quiet day at a time.